I'm now going to switch over to Matt Greenberg and Rebecca Konevsky, who are going to lead us in this conversation.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I am, as Jonathan told you, Matt Greenberg, and joined today by Rebecca Konevsky. We are both therapists here at Schoke Jewish Family Service. And our purpose today is to try and demonstrate some strategies to help cope with the fear and the anxiety that everybody is experiencing around the coronavirus. We really are not used to dealing with this. This is a brand new kind of a situation. So we're all on, fresh ground and trying to find our way through it. And in dealing with the stress and the anxiety, there are two main causes. One of the causes, the main cause of stress, is the uncertainty and feelings of helplessness. So to reduce uncertainty, what you have to do is provide information that will be tailored to each of your children's specific developmental stage. And to cope with feelings of helplessness, we have to improve our sense of self-reliance. So like you, we don't have all the answers, but we have some ideas about how we might get through this based on experiences with children and dealing with other kinds of fears and traumas. We're going to share some ideas and thoughts from experts in the field. A lot of this information is information is information that is the kinds of things as parents you do all the time. But one of the things that we find helpful is at times like this, just to sort of go over it again, use your inner strength to refresh yourselves about how you use your skills to help your children. And hopefully by the time we're done, you'll have some information and some ideas and some thoughts about how you can talk to your children about the crisis and the fears that they're facing. The information we're going to present is really going to try and cover children of all ages. We're going to talk about things that are specific to children at different developmental ages, but a lot of the principles are really very much the same for children, whether they're 6 years old or 16 years old. So at this point, I'm going to turn our microphone over to Rebecca, and she's going to talk a little bit about just some general ideas about things that really you should be thinking about and ways in which you should be approaching your children. And by the way, this applies to you as well. So it can be, things that are applicable for adults. So Rebecca?
Good morning, everybody. As you see on the screen, what we're going to do right now is go through some of the guiding principles. And Matt, you said it best. These are all probably skills, parenting skills that you already know and that you're already using. But as Matt, again, as he said, these are times of uncertainty, and we don't really know exactly how to explain often with our children when we're presented with new material, such as the coronavirus. We might feel at a loss. So the first thing that's so important for us to recognize is that the better we're doing, the better our children are doing. So we want to start with ourselves first. Keep yourself calm. There is a wealth of information floating around out there. There's probably very few media outlets not covering the coronavirus right now. And forget turning on social media. It's besieged by the coronavirus. So we want to try to keep ourselves calm. If you are experiencing a sense of panic, you might want to figure out whatever you need to do to center yourself, to calm yourself down, so that we present the situation to our children in a way that compartmentalizes some of the stronger feelings, and we come to them ourselves with a sense of calm and collective composure. Make sure you're initiating the conversation. You want to be, as the parent, their go-to. We don't want our children getting information from sources other than their family right now. So let's not be afraid of having this conversation with our children and talk to them. Start off by asking, what do they know? What have they heard? What are some of the conversations that have taken place with their friends on their chat groups online? Let your child tell you what they've been hearing and reading and talking about, and help them dispel some of the misconceptions, the misperceptions, and some of the mythology that's going on with a public health crisis. And And we want to remember to keep it age appropriate. So don't tell them anything that would not be developmentally appropriate for them to hear. Every child needs to hear the information in a way that is developmentally appropriate for them and build upon that information. So let's talk about developmental appropriate material. So for children who are under the age of 6, they don't need much detail. We want to make sure that we are being aware of the conversations that are taking place with the older children or the other adults in the home, because these children are hearing and seeing what's going on around them, but do not yet have the concretized thinking skills that are capable for them to properly make sense of what material is being presented to them. For school-age children, it's very important to talk about the outbreak because they're already of an age where they can start to take action steps, prevent potential threat or spread. So we want to really help them figure out what they need to do as little emerging teens or tweens to take care of themselves and to be safe. So we don't necessarily want to focus on the dying aspect, but we want to focus on the preventative care aspect, the washing of the hands, making it fun for them. School-age children, you could actually, believe it or not, even in times of crisis, you could try to remember that you can mitigate the crisis by turning things into games. So some things that children are doing right now are singing special songs while they're washing their hands to make sure they're washing their hands for the proper amount of time, or playing fun little word games while they're taking off their shoes when they first come in the house. Preteens and teens are very interesting because they're probably the most informed and the most connected to the news, to the media outlets, to the news, to social media. So we can't really withhold information from them, but we do want to make sure that we help them focus on what is important for them to know, how to figure out how to become discerning consumers and understand the information that they're hearing is not always true, and to try again, just like we started by saying one of the most important things is to keep yourself calm. Try to help them figure out what to do with the strong feelings that they might be having. For these preteens and teens, for many of them, they're at an age now where many of their events are being canceled, and they, as a result, are having subsequent strong emotional responses to all of the cancellations and all of their social events and their socializing being taken away from them. So we want to be very cognizant of the myriad of feelings that they're feeling, not just because of the threat of the public health epidemic, but because of the age and stage that they're in, where the social impact of their life is being heavily influenced by this, by the coronavirus, and therefore talking to them about all of the aspects of the epidemic.
Okay, so Rebecca just has covered a lot of this, a lot of the information, and just to pick up on a little bit more, I think there's certain things that you have to do for all of your children, regardless of what age they are. Obviously, they need to know that you are there. They need to know that they can count on you, that the information that you're going to provide to them is going to be honest and accurate. You have to be their source of information, as Rebecca mentioned, as opposed to picking things up in other places. We're going to move into some very specific things for each age level. Jonathan, okay, all right. So I just want to now focus a little bit on the three different areas of development that I wanted to emphasize. So I guess first thing I would say to you is that kids at any age need to know that you are available, that you are willing to hear them, that you're willing to have their best interest in mind and be listening to their fears and their concerns. So I mean, I think that's first and foremost. that your job as a parent, and then what the message you need to tell them is it's your job to keep them safe and secure, and that you're going to do everything that you can in order to do that. So as Rebecca had mentioned, especially with younger children, don't give them too much information. They don't need to know the name of the virus. They don't need to know, exactly how it gets spread. What they do need to know is that there are germs out in the world, and people get sick, and they know people that get sick, and they know, people have to stay at home, and they have to stay in bed a lot of times, and they have fevers. So one of the things you can do, particularly with little children, is talk to them a lot about how to stay healthy, what kinds of things we do to stay healthy. We wash our hands, as Rebecca said. Sometimes we sing different songs. In each case, with each level of development, the things that are most important are patience and tolerance and providing reassurance. Those first two bullet points under practice. Those are the two things that your children really need more than anything else. They need to know you're there for them. They need to know they can count on you. And they need to know that you're going to listen to them. With school-age children, you can be a little bit more information sharing. You can tell them a little bit about how the virus spreads, what they can do to prevent it, but stay away from talking about things like dying. This is things that will scare children. Talk about the things that you as a grown-up are doing to prevent the spread of the virus, and the things that you're doing for yourself in order to be careful. Kids know that people get sick, and they don't really want to be sick. So they'll understand what it means to prevent getting sick and the measures they need to take in order to do that. With the preteens and the teenagers, I think that there's a lot of information. We all know there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of rumors about how many and how much and how fatal. So your teenagers and your preteens, they're getting this information. And what we need to do is dispel those alarmist rumors and let them know that, there is science behind this, and we know how these things work and what they do. And let them talk it out, and let them be, you can be a listening ear to them. And one of the things that's important for kids this age is to remind them of past experiences that they've had with uncertain challenges and how they've coped with it. So it's a helpful developmental exercise, for example, to let kids know that there's danger in the world and that we have learned how to handle fears and disappointments. So one of the ways you do that is you remind them of things like, oh, you remember the time that the tree fell on the house, or remember when the roads were icy and we had a hard time getting to school. So if you bring it back to a challenging time when we've all gotten those skills where we've learned how to get through them together, it empowers them and it encourages them to understand how we can get through these difficult times together. So you can say to them, when all of this happened, we really didn't have all of the answers at that time, but we learned how to get through it, and we learned how to get through it together. So I hope that this has been helpful. We're going to open this up in a few minutes for questions for any of you that might have them. As you can see on your screen, when is it that you should seek professional help? Obviously, if your children or if you are having issues that are really severe and difficulty functioning, then please feel free to reach out to us. Our offices are open, and we will be able to remain certainly in contact with you whether we are physically here or not, although for the time being we intend to remain here in the offices with some limited contact to folks outside. Feel free to reach out to us. Our telephone number is on our website, but it's 203-921-4161. We are here, we are ready to help you and available for any concerns or questions you might have. So thank you for joining us today.
Okay, everybody, we're going to open it up for any questions. I'm going to unmute everybody in the webinar, and let's see if there are any questions that people have. Any questions from the group?
I guess we did a thorough job, but thank you again for joining us. We have if any of you are, again, if anybody needs to contact us, reach out to us. We're here. Please feel free. Thank you for joining us.
And I just want to, I think it's really important that before we close, that it's that we reiterate that feelings from a child are neither good nor bad. They just are. And so it's that when in a situation where there's a lot of information swirling, it is very natural. It's a very normal response to feel anxious, because anxiety flourishes when there's a lack of understanding. So you will theoretically possibly see an increase in anxiety as the children are being sent home from school for homeschooling, and businesses around us are closing down and events are being canceled. It's very natural. It's a normal response. And so it's important for us just to keep that in mind, that anxiety is normal and natural in situations where there's a lack of understanding.
Yeah, I have one question. So I have two children, a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old. And the 16-year-old is a competitive tennis player. And the challenge he's facing right now is he's seeing tournaments, the NCAA tournaments canceled. He's seeing all this stuff being canceled. What do I tell him in relationship to what's going on, what the potentials are, what those things mean?
Yeah, I guess if it were me, what I would probably do is just to reiterate to him again.
I just lost you.
I'm sorry?
I
was using it as an opportunity to demonstrate how we're taking steps to ensure that the public is safe, right? In other words, instead of saying, yeah, I know it's really scary, and I know it's horrible, and I know it's terrible, I would say, we understand that the easiest thing to do in order to avoid spreading this is to maintain some sort of distance. And you can see that what people have done is taken the opportunity to really take these public gatherings and not have them at the moment in order to ensure that we are not transmitting this from one to the other. And I guess I would use it as sort of a positive way of reinforcing the kinds of steps that we're taking to make sure that this is not spread, and use it that way.
No, the challenge with that is when he looks at and they look at social media or whatever, they're looking at Snapchat, they're looking at all that stuff, and they understand what's going on, and they're peer conversations about that. The challenge with that is right now every major sports event has been canceled, and now they have the question of what does this mean to me?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I'm glad that you brought it up, and it's exactly what we were speaking about, which is that as these social events are being canceled, children in the teenage age group, this is exactly where they are developmentally. This is all they care about.
Yep.
How is this going to impact my life? I would just encourage you again, Jonathan, I don't know if you can pull up the slide that starts with emphasize that you're there. But it's so important for you to understand that you can't necessarily provide an answer for them, but you can be a place to listen. And the more that you can have them talking and getting their feelings out to you, the more opportunity you have to address their concern in a way that just shows empathy, compassion, understanding. Listen, just listen. Let them know, like Matt said, he brought up a really important point, which is that if you can try to help him understand that none of us really have an understanding, none of us, we're all trying to work on this together collectively, right? As an entire world, the whole world is working on this collectively. And so here's what we can do. Here's what we can do, and just be the place that he comes to express his woes and his sadness. Make sure that you're just keeping that channel of communication open as much as possible. You cannot probably provide an answer, but you can provide a guiding source. You can be a resource for him.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, there was a question that was raised also through chat about teenagers and their concerns about dying. I guess that we're not doctors, obviously, and I can't speak to the medical aspects, but one of the things we know is that despite the fact that this is a very serious pandemic and a very serious thing, that most people don't die from this, and that especially children who, for whatever reasons, seem to be somewhat, immune is not the right word, but there are very, very few cases of children catching this, getting this. I think a lot of times our teenagers and children worry not only about themselves, but also worry about their parents or their grandparents. And the reality is that, it's something that's a real thing. And I guess what we would do is just emphasize to them what steps that we need to take and what steps, we can recommend that our parents or grandparents take in order to protect themselves from, from this virus. But, I think that the reality is from the information I've seen, 98% of the people that get this virus recover. So I think one of the things is to dispel the myths and the rumors. I think we're hearing a lot of the sensational things about people, getting sick and people dying. But the reality is that's just not really the case. And I think, kids, teenagers can go online, they can get the information themselves. You can help them and monitor what they're doing online in terms of, getting that information. But, it's just to keep reemphasizing that this is something that most likely most of us will recover from and get through.
Thank you, everybody. If there are no more questions, we'll conclude the webinar, and we will be able to, we will post this slideshow on our Facebook or through some other way for people to get it if they'd like to share it more broadly in the community. Are there any other questions or concerns?
Yeah, there is a good one that just came up.
Hi, thank you. It's Jody. Sorry about that. My mic was muted still. I don't know why. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So yeah, I just typed it again. I was wondering if you have any tips regarding kind of the stir craziness. Right? It's really a challenge, and I personally work from home, and so I'm used to it, and it doesn't bother me. But for children who are used to the personal contact and kind of having distractions during the day, I think the remote learning and kind of staying in the house, even though we're not quarantined, is kind of frustrating for them.
You're experiencing that.
I was going to ask you.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I have to reiterate that as we earlier on, this is new ground for all of us.
I know.
So that we unfortunately don't have all the answers. We have some of them that can be helpful. Look, there are things that kids can do depending on their ages. Most of our kids are, they're umbilically attached, if that's the right word, to their cell phones and to their chat and to their, to their Snapchat and all the other things that they do. So they're probably remaining in touch with their friends. Obviously, they're not going out and getting in touch with them. But younger kids, unfortunately, parents are gonna have to take a little more action to provide them with games and activities and things like that. And the older kids are really they're relegated to communicating on the phone and by chat and the other methods that they typically do. But it's going to be difficult. And
the one of the greatest points that some of the other leaders in the field are making right now is we have to try to create some normalcy in our children's lives while they're all being pulled out of their school and their programs, and they're being sent home. And so we do want to continue a structure and a routine, because children thrive with structure and routine and predictability. So if those children who are now home had a gym program during the day, you're going to want to maintain at 2 o'clock, they would normally be going to gym at school. Send them outside and make them do some sit-ups, and send them outside to do a couple of circles.
But only in your backyard.
Right.
Right.
Not,
Right.
not in the proximity of anyone else, but you want to make sure that you're creating some kind of routine. Another great resource would be to try to flip the script and use a bit of a positive psychology approach. How can we use this time to be creative and take up something new that we've always wanted to take up but never had the time because we were traveling to school and traveling to an activity? This might be a great time for them to be journaling and doing other kind of projects that they had thought about doing but never really had the time. And so maybe this is a time where they want to come up with an idea for a project. They want to journal, they want to do art. So the best you can to flip this into an opportunity.
Thank you. That does make absolute sense. I think one of the challenges is on the weekends when children tend to have play dates or get together, and trying to figure out, well, so-and-so is not having symptoms, but you really shouldn't be in contact with other people different than your family. And so I think it's the unknown of what'll happen, the frustration of not being able to hang on the weekends, and so all of that, it does make sense, but with teenagers, I think it's extra challenging.
Yeah, they're very good points. And we failed to mention earlier, as Rebecca just said, that these routines are very important. So bedtimes should remain the same, and all of the routines that kids are used to doing, especially for younger kids, because when the routines get broken up, then the younger kids particularly get very unnerved, and it becomes a major issue. So to the extent that it's possible, you try to stick with the routines, and it's going to be challenging. It's going to be challenging.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, everybody. And we're going to conclude the webinar now, and we will send information out to everyone regarding how they can then share this more broadly in the community. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.